President of the Human Rights Council, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I'm honored to present the Working Group thematic report on the procurement and deployment of artificial intelligence systems in accordance with the guidance principles on business and human rights. This report underscores the very urgent need for the states and businesses to ensure human rights protection in use of artificial intelligence systems, to address regulatory gaps and accountability challenges. I will also report on the Working Group official country visit to Colombia and acknowledge the report of the 2024 Forum on Business and Human Rights. The Working Group has recognized the vital role of technologies in the past. At the same time, the use of technologies by states and by businesses can have an adverse impact on virtually all internationally recognized human rights, including data protection, security, privacy, non-discrimination, right to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, and the freedom of expression, of course, among the others. The Working Group stock-taking reveals that states increasingly are shifting from voluntary guidance to mandatory legislation on artificial intelligence and human rights. However, this regulatory landscape is still fragmented. It lacks universal standards that would have clearly established red lines. It insufficiently integrates the perspective of the global south, provides for very broad exceptions, and the involvement of civil society was also insufficient. Artificial intelligence technologies are increasingly integrated in the critical public and private sector functions, from law enforcement to social protection, finance, surveillance, and other areas. However, what we observed that many states and businesses procure and deploy artificial intelligence systems without adequate human rights safeguards. Therefore, we urge the states to ensure that AI and related regulations align with international human rights law by implementing mandatory human rights due diligence, establishing oversight mechanisms, and ensuring transparency and ethical procurement frameworks. The Working Group furthermore observes that many businesses are quite in early stages of identifying their human rights impacts, risking adverse impacts such as biased decision-making, exploitative working surveillance, or manipulation of consumer behavior. Therefore, we also call upon businesses to conduct robust human rights due diligence, disclose the use of artificial intelligence, disclose the risks of artificial intelligence use, as well as establish grievance mechanisms, collaborate across sectors to increase the leverage, and very importantly, empower the SMEs. Further, access to remedy in this area remains insufficient, with affected individuals facing opaque complaint mechanisms, legal barriers, limited corporate accountability. So strengthening the enforcement mechanisms, shifting the burden of proof to AI providers is very essential to ensuring effective redress. The report also highlights emerging good practices, for example, by states introducing safeguards for AI deployment, standardized public procurement policies, algorithm registers, or mandatory impact assessments. In the private sector, for instance, development of AI ethical frameworks, evaluation of AI projects, stakeholder engagement when deploying new AI systems, or cross-sectoral collaboration. In conclusion, the implementation of the guiding principles in AI procurement and deployment is critical in order to ensure that AI is procured and deployed to fulfill human rights rather than erode them. Collaborative efforts among states, businesses, civil society are very essential to achieve that rights-respecting AI procurement and deployment happens. And I would like to use this opportunity to express our sincere gratitude to the states and other stakeholders who contributed substantively to this report, and I look forward to the discussions. Excellencies, I turn now to the country visit to Colombia, which took place from 29 July to 9 August of 2024. The Working Group, first of all, would like to express our gratitude to the government of Colombia for its support and for its openness in engaging in constructive dialogue. The working group also expresses its appreciation to businesses, civil society representatives, human rights and environmental defenders, trade unions, and many, many other stakeholders who generously shared their experiences and insights. The report, first of all, acknowledges Colombia's leadership in the region, including its early adoption of the National Action Plan, ratification of the Escazú Agreement last year. The working group commends the government's commitment to adhere and advance the guiding principles and recognizes the progress that was made in the constitutional protections and environmental legislation. At the same time, the working group remains concerned about persistent structural challenges, including the enduring presence of non-state armed groups, widespread violence, insecurity, and the lack of adequate protection for human rights defenders. The report highlights the disproportionate impact of irresponsible business practices on indigenous peoples, Afro-descendant communities, and peasants. The working group also noted the room for improvement as concerns corporate accountability and lack of meaningful consultation with affected communities. So there is an urgent need for heightened human rights due diligence and for businesses to engage in truth, reconciliation, and reparation process. The report further identifies the critical gaps in regard to access to remedy and calls for stronger enforcement of court decisions, improved coordination among institutions, and the establishment of effective grievance mechanisms. Advancing the implementation of the guiding principles in Colombia is essential not only for addressing historical injustices and preventing future harms, but also for fostering inclusive development, environmental sustainability, and lasting peace. Excellencies, I am now turning to the forum report I mentioned earlier. The 2024 Forum on Business and Human Rights, which was titled Realizing the Smart Mix of Measures to Protect Human Rights in the Context of Business Activities, was successfully conducted from 25th to 27th of November of last year, drawing nearly 4,000 participants from 156 countries. Discussions focused on the implementation of voluntary and mandatory measures to uphold the human rights, particularly in light of emerging global challenges, such as the climate change, technological advancements, and increased inequality. The forum emphasized the need for stronger regulatory frameworks, enhanced access to remedy, and inclusive stakeholder engagement. Key themes, including, among others, the role of mandatory human rights due diligence, the protection of human rights defenders, and integration of indigenous rights and environmental concerns into business practice. I thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussions with you today.